I studied, what did I study? I went to a piano teacher named Salvatore Sulo when I was 8 years old. I went to another piano teacher when I was 5. My dad sent me. I didn't like him, though. I remember that fella. I remember as a young 5-year-old that his apartment smelled. Oh. So it kind of turned me off because my mother used to keep a real clean place. His apartment was kind of smelly. So I didn't like that so much, but I remember going to Sulo when I was 8 years old, and he showed me a lot about fingering, actually. Salvatore Sulo was a classical pianist who used to play for several summers in a row with the Boston Pops. He used to play the Beethoven's Emperor Concerto. So he was an accomplished pianist, and he used to play for me at the lessons, and I used to love watching him play. But I don't think I practiced that much when I was a kid. I liked to stay out and play. So I studied classical music a little bit. It wasn't, you know, the time I studied classical music the most was when I auditioned for Juilliard School of Music in 1959, because I wanted to stay in New York and have an excuse as a 16 or 17-year-old for staying in New York City. So I had to go back to Boston, back home, to practice for about 6 or 7 months this repertoire of 7 pieces that I had to put to memory. I couldn't play them now. Prokofiev, if I remember, was one that was dear to me. And then I went to Juilliard, but then that didn't hit the mark for me either. And I left Juilliard, and then I just stayed in New York. So anything that I've studied was pretty much on my own and on the job, like working with other musicians, working in bands, doing gigs, going back to my apartment and working it out on my own, and listening to records, doing some transcribing. I transcribed Charlie Parker, John Coltrane. I transcribed some of Miles Davis. I transcribed a lot of Horace Silver because I loved his compositions. So that was, briefly, that was my upbringing.